smart aesthetic, branding, marketing, entrepreneurship.
Greetings and welcome back to the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. I'm so excited to have Katie on the podcast today. Welcome, Katie.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you because we don't often get photographers on the podcast, actually. It's definitely been a minute since I've talked to a fellow photographer. But for anyone who doesn't know you, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and who you help?
Yes. So I am Katie. My creative agency is called Katie Wann Inc. We're a full service boutique size creative agency, and we mostly serve food and beverage brands. And we offer photography and design services.
So how long have you been running this business and how did you get to here? Because I always love hearing everyone's origin story. Like, did you know that this is always what you wanted to do? Did you fall into it? Did you shadow someone? How did you get to Katie Wann Inc.?
Yes. So I believe that this year will be 7 years in business in September, which is crazy to think about. And yeah, I think I always knew I wanted to be in the creative space in some way. I think even when I was younger, like I was in art classes and I loved to draw and I loved to like problem solve and do puzzles. And like I was also very interested in technology. When I first got a computer, you couldn't get me off of that thing. So I think in my mind, I was kind of like, how do I merge these two creative fields? And I was able to kind of land on like graphic design as like a job trajectory. At that point in my life, I hadn't really considered photography as like an option. It just, it wasn't in my realm of consciousness at that point. So I went to school for graphic design and I went to a liberal arts college here in San Diego called Point Loma Nazarene. And I was able to kind of immerse myself in all sorts of different like creative classes and fields and whatnot. And they're very encouraging of you trying pretty much everything. And I think it was my sophomore year, we went on a Euro term kind of semester with a bunch of art students. And I was able to like live in Paris and travel all around Italy and Germany and see kind of like the origins of like art history and I don't know, just experience so many cool, inspiring things while I was there. And that's where I picked up photography for the first time. It was just like, an art student with a camera.
Sure.
And I went wild and I was like, oh my gosh, this is my new passion. I love this. Like, what am I doing? Why am I studying graphic design? I want to be a photographer. But, you're like halfway through your college experience. And I'm like, my parents are helping pay for this. I've got to get the degree. I've got to get the job. Like, so I stuck with it. And I just realized like maybe I could start dabbling in photography on the side. So I started like a wedding and lifestyle photography business while I was in college, photographing all my friends' seniors' photos, like events, like whatever I could really get my hands on, which was awesome and like really great, learning experience just doing it. That was my first foray into like starting my own business too. So I knew that I could do something like that if I really wanted to, but I didn't necessarily see that as like my full-time job in the future. And also the wedding industry is very difficult. I know that you are aware of that. It's a very crazy niche. And like props to anyone who can do that long term, but it wasn't for me. So when I graduated, I was looking for more of a design oriented job, to like build up my foundation, my income, all those things. And I landed at I did freelance, but I also landed at a creative or a restaurant franchise in San Diego.
Okay.
And I was like, on a very small team of marketers and I was like the lead creative and I was doing a lot of design work and kind of just like helping modernize them and bring them into like the 21st century. And I dabbled a little bit in food photography while I was there because I was also helping like run their socials. And I was like, we need a lot of help here. And I had never done that before. I'd only photographed people up to that point. And so while I'm doing that, I'm like, this is kind of fun. Like, I don't have to like direct these pancakes of how they should look. Like, I just kind of get to play with it and figure it out and test the lighting. And like, no one else has to be here. It can just be me. And that was like kind of cool to have that experience and realize like, hey, maybe there's like something here. And so when I left there, I freelanced again for a while and I ended up working with like 2 different food brands. One of them being Suja Juice.
Huge.
Yes, it was amazing. And they ended up hiring me full time. And so I became their first in-house creative
Amazing.
specialist. And so I was doing design work for them. And while I was there, I was pitching myself as like, hey, like I am a photographer. I've dabbled in the food space
Uh-huh.
a bit.
Uh-huh.
Like I feel like I can really like do that here as well. And so they gave me just so many opportunities to like take creative freedom and run with it. And that was so fun. And, there I'm working with like people all my age who are just like so cool and know their stuff and they're creative. And it was really inspiring and really fun. But, after 4 years, I got a bit burnt out and I was like tired of just photographing for one product and one brand.
Sure.
And, in the food and beverage world, it's like very incestual in that like people hop from brand to brand.
And in San Diego food world is something I'm just starting to dip my toes in. And I'm like, holy smokes, all you guys are connected to each other.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, it's great for business, great for networking, but like it's almost guaranteed that if you're in the space, you're going to stay in the space. And so I had made a lot of connections just working there and making friends, and then those friends going to other brands or starting their own brands or whatnot. So by the time I decided that I wanted to leave, I already kind of had like an idea of some people that I could work with, which made taking the leap a lot easier to do because I wasn't as fearful. And also Suja was a retainer client of mine for almost the full first year, which was amazing and super helpful. So that's like kind of what led me to like starting the business, but I don't want to keep going because there's so much more in between.
There's so much like to learn, I feel like, from other people's come up story because, we have that in common that we both started in college.
Yeah.
I started my graphic design business in college, technically, and was sitting and doing graphic design for friends and friends of friends.
Totally.
And the girl that was starting the surf camp and, making t-shirts for the sorority.
Totally,
and there were loads of projects that I took on. And then my whole senior year, I was the like video editor of Gamma Phi Beta. Like every event, like I was putting together, I had literally a flip camera. Do you remember these?
Oh, yeah.
They were like these tiny little blocks and I had dangling around my wrist that I took to every event because we weren't filming stuff on our phones. It's just so funny because all those skills do get you to where you're at. And then you also look back at like how different the tech is, which we'll talk about tech stuff because holy smokes. But I love that you kind of found food photography as like, oh, wow, there's less variables here. Like I don't have to direct people. I don't have to deal with like being somewhere at the same time. I can be self-directed. I also feel like, because I've like dabbled in like content creation stuff, the biggest thing about having that, which is such an asset, is like you can make such a mess by yourself.
Totally.
Like the process of it can get so involved. And I've got to imagine like as a food photographer, like the props and the styling and the surfaces and the lighting, like all of those end up as like really fun variables. But like, where do you stop?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's the French idea of less is more, you gotta
Yes.
yourself.
Yes. Okay. So you're at Suja, you're getting a ton of experience with Suja. You go out on your own. They stay as a retainer client. You start getting other clients. Luckily, photography is a very sellable skill because either you got it or you don't. But how did you know like what to offer people as you're making that jump from like, I used to work in an office with people and get paid a salary to now I'm on my own?
Yeah.
Like, was that an easy transition or were you like, I'm just going to try it and see what sticks?
Yeah. Honestly, at the beginning, I remember I started my business Instagram page like almost a year into my business because I just didn't really think about like marketing myself in the way. I had not really marketed myself much. My clients the first year were all kind of referral based and or like just arty people that I knew, which was amazing. But I started my Instagram page to try to connect with other creatives because I was like, I got to ask these people like what they're doing and how they're doing it. And I set up calls with like all these people who are still people that I talk to today who are so amazing. And I'm so thankful that they like opened the door to like just speaking with me for 30 minutes. But yeah, I was just trying to get an understanding of like, what do people want and what are you charging and how are you doing this and what do I need to do? And, I didn't get all of my answers, but I just tried really hard to like take as many notes as possible. And then really like, even up until the last like couple years, like it's really been, trial and error and kind of like we do customize most of our offerings to what a brand is looking for and what they need. So it is a lot of like custom proposals, but 90% of the time I've figured out like this is the formula at least for where we start as a base. But yeah, I was pitching myself as like, hey, and I still do today. Hey, I've worked on the brand side. Like I know what it's like to need things really quickly, to need what you need it for. Like I can kind of envision that as like being in your shoes. And now I'm also offering it to you from like the creative standpoint, you know? So I think that helps. That's like something that sets us apart is just like, I've been there. And so I get it and I kind of know what you need, but I need you to give me more specifics. But that's the formula that I feel like has worked best for us.
Well, and that's such an asset, like being somebody who hires and helps to hire photographers. It's like, we have to have such specific spec lists. Like I need to make sure that whatever image that you take can get cropped vertical and cropped horizontal, that we have clear space for copy, that we have space for ad, that we have like with accessories, without accessories, like just to make sure. And that shot list really only came about from trial and error because we'd like send product to a photographer and we'd say, okay, here's our mood board and like let them handle it. Yeah. And it was great. But then we're actually working with the assets from a design standpoint, which is so nice that you have a design background because you're like, nope, I get it. I understand there needs to be a headline and a call to action. And like, shop now button, postcard, packaging, web banner, motion graphics. Like there's really so much to do. And it's so interesting because now we're like, I'm working as like pseudo creative director for a few of our retainer clients and like delegating out to photographers and videographers, you get such a breadth of stuff back. It's like, it literally like there is no consistency from photographer to photographer as far as like what handoff is. And that's been like a real learning curve because I got absolutely spoiled with the videography team that we worked with Vibe House when they worked on my brand video. That I was like, oh, this is how all videographers do it. It's just like, it's been super interesting because it's like trying to figure out the right balance of like, you want to respect the photographer and their craft and like what they're bringing to the table. But it is one of those deliverables. It's like, no, I need these very specific specs. Right. So I've got to imagine that's an advantage for you and your team when you're working with clients.
Honestly, that is something I think with maybe the last like 5 photo projects that we've done for clients that has been like a standard ask on their end. And I just basically expect it now, but is like, we have to plan to shoot the image wide enough so that it can be cropped at many different angles. It's not, not every shot and every setup is going to be able to be cropped at, all 5 crops that you want, but maybe we'll get 3 out of it. And that's better than just 1. And so, a lot of the projects that we do are these like kind of product hero focused evergreen content buckets for brands to utilize across like all platforms. And so I think even like you're saying for ads, for, website banners, for whatever, like that's even more important for like those instances. And it takes away some of the creativity because, if we're doing that, we're typically only utilizing like solid color backgrounds so that you can like extend the background as far as possible in order to fit whatever you need to. But that's what people are asking for. That's what they need and that's what they want. And so we're like, okay, how within those parameters can we still get like creative and fun and intriguing and unique,
So walk us through your process. Let's say somebody's listening to this episode, they have a food related product. Are you pretty exclusively food or will you venture into other categories as well?
Like we have, it's just, like I said, that's our niche is like food and beverage and that's our connections. And, I'm sure you know this, but what you put out there, you get more back of, and that's like what we put out there. So I'm happy saying like that is our bread and butter. But any product photography, I don't know, category, like really what you're doing is heroing the product within the image and like thinking of creative ways to style it and to do that. So I think it's possible to do it with any product. It's just, I love working with like real produce and that is food and beverage. So
definitely. Okay. So let's kind of play the scenario. Let's say someone comes to you, they're starting a beverage company, canned beverage company, and they just did their branding with us.
Yes.
And then they say, we did the branding and the packaging, and then I'm handing them off to you. How are you walking them through, like, let's say they're starting with nothing, brand new company. What's your process to kind of outline, okay, here's what your next like 6 months to a year could look like? Photography wise.
This might be kind of a funny answer, but it's a very rare instance with us if you're brand new that we're going to be like the right fit for you in the very beginning, unless you're willing to invest in good imagery off the bat. That's not, I think it's worth the investment, but not every new brand who has a limited budget thinks so. So I'd say, first of all, I'm going to educate you and get you on board as to like why it's important to invest in your imagery when you've already invested in beautiful branding. You've worked so hard to formulate the product. You've worked so hard to like figure out where it's being sold and how we're marketing it and X, Y, and Z, but then your images fall flat. Like what a bummer that would be, right? First I would walk you through why it's important to invest in good photography. And so once they're on board, we'll walk through kind of like a set. And I don't know if this is the general term, but this is how I describe it, is just evergreen content that's going to feature your product as the hero in a couple of different ways that you can utilize in as many ways as possible. Like we want to get you the best ROI on your investment as possible. And so we'll work with the brand to understand like how many SKUs are there. We'll try to, we have like a questionnaire that we send them that walks through, like, tell us everything about your brand, your product, like let us inside your brain because you are the experts on your brand. And we want to be, semi-experts alongside of you in order to better understand like how we can bring this to life in a creative, beautiful way. And so once we have all of that aligned, we'll put together like a shoot plan doc that basically outlines, I'm a very visual person. So I like visual examples. It's not necessarily going to be, this is exactly what your images are going to look like, but here's some inspiration, whether it's the lighting, whether it's the setup, whether it's the colors, whether it's just this horrible drawing that I put together so that you can get an idea of like what's inside my brain. And we'll present that to them, and then we'll meet with them and walk through it, and they'll pick out, these are the ideas we want to move forward with, and these are the SKUs that we want to shoot within those ideas. So then we have like a full plan of here's what we're doing. From there, we're going to take those concepts and like really dig into like the minutia details of like backgrounds, propping, lighting. We'll even like mock up some of the actual like how we're going to style it. That'll save us time like on shoot day if it's going to be like really complicated. Sometimes it's nice to leave a little bit of like room for creative freedom, on the day of creative play. But with a lot of these, I think it helps us to know like, oh, we need to order like a tennis racket that's purple for this. Like, we need to understand those details ahead of time. And then once they sign off on all of that, then we order the propping, we get the product, we prep the product. We order backgrounds or paint them or whatever, get everything set up, ready to go, do the grocery shopping. And then on shoot day, we're ready to go.
You're going for it.
Yeah.
And you do such a good job of sharing all of this on your Instagram stories, by the way, like the behind the scenes of like, and here's all the backgrounds that we're prepping and here's what we're working for. So, okay. So the goal is like definitely that evergreen photography to start. What I've noticed with clients is that from our perspective, from a branding perspective, let's say we're like shooting a bunch of product for like a specific campaign or a specific launch, is that we drastically overshoot and then we have like 400 images to sort through. And I'm like, I don't really like from a social standpoint and like from an actually launching this standpoint, I don't really need 400. I need like 9. I need like 9 really, really, really good images. Have enough variety that they're different from each other, but they're similar enough they still feel within the same campaign. I love that you're already saying yes, like that you're co-signing on this, because I think there's this tendency to want to get so many, but like when they're only different from each other by a margin of 10%, like your audience is not picking up on that. It's like overkill. Do you feel like photographers shoot overkill?
Yes. Well, yes and no. I think with studio photography, like I guess dependent on how intricate and complicated your setup is, you're only going to shoot a certain amount of images within a day if you're doing, 15 of those. So like you are limited to, your time frame, I guess, dependent on all of that. But lifestyle imagery, I think you can totally go bonkers with it. I've seen both sides, and I decided years ago that like we were going to be much more intentional. And I know that because like you're saying, I've been on the brand side. I've been the designer that's like, oh, like none of these images are right. Like I need something different. And so we pitch ourselves as quality over quantity. Yeah. So we're very much like, that's why we like lay everything out. We're very like intentional with like the process of ideation to like mock-ups to getting you to sign off on everything so that by the time we get to the day of, A, there's no surprises and you're not like upset by what you're seeing. And B, you already know what you're going to be delivered at the end of this. It's going to look 100 times better than what we like mocked up and ideated for you, but you're already expecting, okay, these are the concepts we landed on and this is what we're getting. And we already are dreaming up how we're going to use this. And, we might throw in a couple extras or freebies or things that like we're inspired by on the day of, but you're not getting 1,000 images that aren't correlated to what we
Usable.
discussed.
Yeah.
And also we're like meticulous editors. So it would take, like if I shot 200 images, I'm not going to meticulously edit all of those. But if I have a set of 25 images, I'm going to spend hours on those and make sure that they are perfect and they're amazing and they're good to go. So I think
what I'm hearing you say is like big pre-production phase, big post-production phase. So like your shooting is actually quite narrow, but because you're doing, it's the same with branding, right? Like we're able to deliver really great branding on the first try because we did all the research and we asked all the right type of questions and we got your confirmation. Like, do you like this mood board? Do we like this color palette? Is this the kind of right positioning for you? Okay, great. Now we can go. Yeah. Because if we didn't do that, then, and you show somebody branding and they're like, this isn't at all what I thought it was going to look like. You're just having to reinvent the wheel. And what I'm always telling clients is like, I want you to be excited, but not surprised. Yeah. Like, I don't want you to see the branding and be like, where the hell is this coming from? Like,
that's a designer's nightmare. That's a creative's nightmare.
Creative nightmare. So, and then the post-production, right? So, so you're spending time then in Photoshop, cleaning things up, smoothing edges, wrinkles, impurities in the images, stuff like that. Is that something that you have your whole team work on, or is each person like individually responsible for a project start to finish?
So with like, it's different parts of the business. With design, like we're very tag teamy unless it's something where one of my designers, I'm like, I know that this is like your wheelhouse. Like, sure, I will check it off at the end and I don't need to touch that. Like, we're good. With photography, it's really hard for me to like let go of almost any part of the process. Like, I actually have worked with editors in the past, like outsourcing that. But I have pulled back and have decided to do that in-house because we are evaluating it in terms of like, we're not shooting 100 images, we're shooting 20 images. And so it is more doable and we're just charging for that portion of the process in-house.
Well, and it sounds like you, because it is a more manageable scale, like it's easier for you to execute on the edit also because you probably had the vision for the edit when you were shooting the photo in the first place. Like that's where I can sometimes get stuck too. It's like, I don't want to hand this off just yet because like, I don't know how to show them what I'm seeing in my brain.
Totally.
For the end result. Okay. So I'm not alone in that.
But in terms of like the planning and like the day of stuff, I'm more than happy to like delegate and have help in those areas. It is more like finalizing and completing like the vision the way that I saw it. And I do that with design work sometimes too, like I might make the final tweaks on something, even if I pass the project off to someone else, because I'm like, this is a team effort, Yeah,
but it has to have your like thumbprint on it, your signature, you know, like you want to feel confident. That's like, yes, I've seen this. I've had my hands in it. It feels like me, like ready to go. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think that's,
and the client's trusting you at the end of the day. Like obviously they're trusting your business and your team, but you're the one that hired your team. You're the one that's running the show. Your name's on the dotted line. Like it's my reputation. Like, I have to love it.
Absolutely. And then, of course, you do a great job. That client refers you to more clients. But also, the fun fact of how we know each other is through a networking group.
Yes.
So I would love to spend some time talking about networking, how you've networked, which ones you felt like were worth the effort, not so worth the effort, and how it's really impacted your business. Because I think this is something I always get people in the DMs, especially people that listen to this podcast. It's like, I'm really struggling to get clients and to find clients. And I think like one of my first recommendations is always like, you got to in-person network.
Yes.
But not in a shove your business card in someone's face kind of way, and like a get to know someone, get to know what they need and say like, oh, I've solved that problem before. So I'm curious if the networking stuff came naturally to you. Naturally is a pun for the group, naturally. A wink, wink. But, or even how you found out about the group and which groups you love going back to, especially if you're someone in San Diego, this is going to be a treasure trove.
Yes. So a couple things in terms of networking. It does not come naturally to me. I am an introvert, but I'm like an extroverted introvert. So it takes a lot of effort and energy for me to connect with people, but I do love doing it. So it's a weird oxymoron in my life. But it's much it takes a lot of practice, I think, to like feel comfortable and get good at it. And like, if you're not someone that it comes naturally to, you're still going to feel uncomfortable and nervous and awkward walking into that situation. But the more that you do it, the more it becomes like habitual and second nature. The other piece of it is, I think I didn't understand this maybe as much early on, but I very much understand it now, is that you're planting seeds. It's not instant gratification. So even like you're saying, even if you're not like directly handing them a business card saying like, let's work together right now, that's like definitely the more robust approach. But if you're just like building the connection and the friendship and I don't know, whatever it is you have in common with this person or whatever you can come back to, it's a long play and you have to like be patient and it may never amount to anything. And that has to be like, okay. But I do think that like it's worth it. Early on in my business, I was really poor at the outreach piece. And also like COVID happened, like a year or two into my business. So the way that I found out about the group that we're a part of called Naturally San Diego, is they were doing like online virtual, like they called it like coffee and convos, but like you're just like sipping coffee at home on the computer with people that you're like, who are you? Why are we talking? Like, this is awkward. And it was good to have something like that, but it was a really rough transition between that and like then starting to do that in person. Like, it's just very different. So yeah, the group that we're a part of is great for my niche. It is very heavily like health and wellness focused, and has a lot of local food and beverage brands that are like a part of it. So I have found that group to be like wildly important for my business. And also just it is fun to find like a local network, I think, to be able to connect with people like in your city and kind of have that like local to local support. And, just meeting cool people that are kind and funny and inspiring and you can talk shop with, like that's pretty fun. I have attended just like a general networking group before, which there wasn't anything wrong with it. But I think I know personally with my creative business, my clients aren't just anyone and everyone. It is very niched. And so unless the person I'm talking to has a connection to my industry or to someone in my industry, we can't support each other in very many ways. And that is kind of the point of networking, is like, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours,
but not even from like we're going to hire each other standpoint. Sometimes it's like, I can connect you to someone that
totally
would help you, right? Like, I think that's the biggest things that I've learned with networking is like consistency.
Yes.
And also like showing up regular, being a familiar face, even if someone doesn't even know what you do. The fact that it's like, okay, I saw that girl last time. Like, I need to go ask what she does. Cause if we're both here at the same time, like we both want to be here. Then the other bit of it is like making sure that you're coming, like not hitting it so hard on the sales. Cause I think that's where people get super turned off, but coming from a place of like, listen first and talk second, like listen to what do you have going on? What projects have you worked on recently? Tell me about what you do. That's really cool. Like, did you hear about this thing?
Yeah.
Super curious, because then you can do what I remember learning in Greek life, which is like you make a bridge. So like, even if I don't have something to say to that person, I'm always trying to think of like, oh my gosh, that reminds me of my friend that I know that does this, or of this other, I'd worked on a project similar to that one time. This is how it happened. Oh, you're interested in tennis? Like, I helped with San Diego Open. Like that came up in actually San Diego. And so it's just like, it's interesting. I love the game of it because I'm like very ADHD in that way of like, and I'm a super extrovert. So I'm like, oh, this is so fun. Like, this feels like a game. But as a more introverted person, do you feel like you have to like pep talk yourself to go to these things?
Absolutely.
Now you've been enough. I feel like you've got a certain level of comfortability.
I felt very comfortable with.
Sure.
Really any like CPG group in San Diego, I've showed up enough at this point, but that doesn't mean at the beginning I felt that way. Even though I'd been a part of the CPG world for almost like 10 years, it's like, it didn't really matter, because I didn't know any of these people, and it was a confidence thing too. Like, I felt inferior, even though that wasn't the case. It was just, you needed to like step outside of your comfort zone and be willing to be uncomfortable and realize, hey, these people are also uncomfortable and nervous and awkward. And like, this may not go perfectly every time I show up here. It may feel not worth it every like one or two times, but it still is. It still is.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And even just being just an observer, like that's why I love like the pitch slam event and stuff like that, because like, I just want to hear what other people are interested in, what they're fired up about. Like where's the culture going? Where's the community going? Those are really important. I've just recently rejoined like the Encinitas Chamber of Commerce. Same idea. They're talking about like the beautification of El Camino Real. And I'm like, okay, that's where my Trader Joe's is. Like, I'm interested in this conversation. Like, you're going to build more green space. You're going to make it walkable. Like, there's something to be said for just getting plugged in and just being like an active listener, where I think especially since COVID, like a lot of small business owners, you end up getting so internal.
Yeah.
The other thing is getting out to networking events, even when you're booked and busy.
Yes. That is the hardest thing for me.
Right.
I don't know if
because
that's
you're
true
booked
for
and
you,
busy right now. Totally.
Like,
just
I can
because
think of taking on another client right now. Why would I go network? But 2 months from now, me is going to look back and be like, God, I'm so glad I went and did that.
Bingo. So it's like, you do have to make it a priority. I kind of fall in and out of seasons of like being super active and not active, kind of based on the travel schedule. And then it's like, I travel and then I come home and I'm like, I'm exhausted. I don't want to go do this whole thing. But it has to become a habit if you want like a sustainable long-term business, because also who the heck knows what's going to happen with Instagram or what's going to happen with TikTok and Facebook and all these other things. And like, if you can continue to flex and grow your muscles around in-person, real life networking, talking to people. I feel like that's a skill set that's like, that will actually outlast some of these other platforms.
Absolutely. And I also think another important note is like, if you can connect, like if you can work harder to connect that person you've met with someone you know, than you are to try to get them to connect to you, like that's going to serve you more in the long run, because you're showing them that like, I'm willing to show up for you. I'm willing to help you. And they're going to remember you even more for that, and just be like appreciative.
I just interviewed on my last on the last podcast episode that I recorded today. I interviewed the marketing manager for the real estate team that we're working with. And I'm like, how did you even find us? You guys are in Milwaukee. We're in San Diego. Like, how did you? And she goes, I'm in a Facebook group called Canva for Real Estate Agents, and someone recommended you.
That's crazy.
And I was like, wow, that's funny. But it was also, we found out that connection was from somebody that I met like 2015, 2016.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I mean, just like, maybe that's another note, like
from a networking group.
Don't burn bridges, be kind, be a good person, show up. Don't leave bad impressions with people you meet, because you never know who will be your connector.
Exactly. Those are just good rules to live by in life. Anyway.
Yeah. Be a good person.
Don't you think? Of course. In our house, it was always, growing up, it was always be a good person, do a good job. You don't have to do the best job, but just like do a good job.
Yeah.
Like, don't phone it in.
I have do good work on my wall. It's just,
I love that.
That's the standard for us.
I love that. Okay, well, since you're in the photography space, I have to ask you what your thoughts are about AI, and if you're using generative AI in your process yet.
Yes, I am not opposed to AI. You know, I think like many creatives, like there is a little bit of fear involved of like, you know what, like this could take over our jobs and our careers someday, and I will have to be okay with that. But I already have my backup plan. You know, someday I'll go start a winery in Northern California and just live my life happily there.
Lovely.
So in that regard, I'm not that scared of it. But
like, oh no, please don't take my job.
Please don't. That sounds so horrible.
Oh no, what will I ever do? Funny.
But yeah, I do use it. I actually use it a lot for like professional email communication. I know that sounds kind of silly, but if I'm like presenting to a brand, especially for the first time, and we're like just, you know, explaining the process or describing a lot of like intricate details, I will write out the full email and then I'll drop it in Chat GPT and I'll be like, hey, help me like professionalize this. And then I'll like clean it up from there. But that has been kind of a game changer. And I have gotten compliments on like the way that emails have been written. So something's working.
Love that.
And then
I'm wondering if you used it at all in like your mood boarding process or like ideation process.
I haven't. And you know, maybe that's to come. I know I follow you and I see all the things that you can do with it. And maybe it's just I haven't had the time to like dabble and figure all of that out, but I'm not opposed to it. It just hasn't come up yet. Yeah. I do use it, however, in the editing process.
Okay. Nice.
Especially like I had a client last year who it was a lifestyle shoot, like on set somewhere, and this the person that we were photographing didn't really smile throughout the process, but that was kind of like the vibe. It
Okay.
was for like a new protein brand, and he was an MMA fighter, and like
Okay.
he kind of wanted to look tough, and like, so it was part of like what they
The
had kind of
shtick.
decided. Yeah, the shtick. And then I got an email after the images had been delivered, and they were like, we're trying to pull an image for this one PR thing, and we don't have like any of him smiling. And so
Whoop.
I found the ones that were like closest to him smiling. I did a little bit of like generative work to kind of like just brighten up like the look of his face.
Mhm.
And then we also had to like, it was for like a really specific ad space. So we had to extend the backgrounds, but we had shot in this like really intricate looking kitchen setting. And so I had to like use AI to expand the kitchen. And had I not used that, it would have taken me, I don't even know how long. And I was doing this like pro bono for them. So it comes in handy and at random times in the editing process, like cleaning things up that would have taken a really long time. And it's not always perfect. Like I'm still having to like edit on top of that or figure it out. But it is a big time saver in terms of like helping where I wouldn't have had that help before.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Any other like tech advancements or tech things that have piqued your interest that you haven't gotten the chance to really kind of jump in cannonball into yet? Like what about virtual reality, AR, 3D photography?
My husband works in all of that stuff.
Okay, nice.
But in a very different realm. Like he's in like injury prevention for businesses. So
cool.
I'm not that, like, once again, not that I'm opposed. I just don't have a lot of free time to like dabble in stuff. And so
fair.
I get updates from him. I have an understanding of the technology, but I'm not in a place right now where I'm like looking to like apply crazy new ideas to my business because I don't want to fix what's not broken at this moment. Yeah. But
there's something for that. Yeah.
But like as time goes on, like it is important to like keep up with technological advances and see, especially, you know, with the cameras and like mirrorless cameras and the new lenses and all the things, like that's the technology piece I'm trying to keep up with. So
yeah, makes sense.
One thing at a time, you know?
Totally. Well, if you could give yourself at the beginning of your journey 7 years ago some advice, maybe somebody who's listening is like wants to do what you do and is really like loving this episode, what would you have told your younger self of like, you've got, just do this, please, for crying out loud?
I mean, honestly, since we were talking about this, the first year of my business, I would have told myself, please start doing outreach, because 6 months, a year from now, when your client pool has dwindled and you're wondering like why you don't have incoming business, it's because you didn't plant those seeds along the way. So that was a really hard lesson. But it also, you know, taught me to do that now.
Okay, so quick question. I know we're almost out of time here. So on the outreach portion, because I've thought about this as well, right? Like I'm more of I'll network with people in person and like post a lot on social. And obviously I've got the podcast, plenty of promotion. But I've always felt that if I wanted to outreach someone to like rebrand them, that they would take it as an insult. Like,
do you mean like cold? Are you saying like
cold pitching?
Cold pitching?
Yeah. So, but photography, like you can say like, hey, I'm a product photographer. I love your product. Like would love to see how we could work together. Is that more what you're talking about with the outreach? Or are you talking like combination, networking, social, like all the facets?
All the things, but really, like I was naive and I had an expectation that people would just find me and come to me. And that doesn't happen in the beginning of your business, no matter how talented or how connected you are. If you're not utilizing those resources, it does not happen. So yes, cold outreach. I don't, you know, there are some businesses. I follow this amazing muralist based out of San Diego. Cold pitching is like how she gets 75% of her business. For me, maybe I'll get 2 clients a year from cold pitching, but
so what are you saying? Like your photography sucks. Let me do it. Like,
no, I'm saying like, I'm sharing like, hey, we've worked with businesses like yours, or
got it.
I love your product, or I love your branding. Like, are you looking to work with anyone this quarter or this year? Or like, do you guys work with a creative team in house? Like, I'm just kind of being curious, you know, and same with design. Like, do you guys have a contracted designer that you work with? Do you have someone in house? Do you need help with design work? Like, if you're putting the ball kind of in their court,
Right.
they're less likely to be like, oh, like how dare they think that I need help with that, you know?
True. Oh my gosh. Well, so much good stuff in here. And you really are like when you are posting on your stories and stuff like that, I'm always checking them out and seeing what you're working on because it's so fun. It's such a skill set that I wish I had photography, but I went the opposite route and like went so into design. But I actually like never took any photography classes, like any of that stuff. And my liberal arts major at USD. So funny kind of small world thing. But yeah, I have so much respect for photography, especially like quality product photography, being the person that's on the other end of it and like really noticing the difference between when we pay someone who's really got the skills versus someone who's more novice. Like, it's so night and day.
Totally.
So for anyone who's interested in working with you, can you tell us where we can find you, follow you, keep up, all of that good stuff?
Yes. So I keep it really easy. Everything is just my name. So socials are Katie Wann Inc. Website is katiewann.com. You can reach out to me on either platform. I will always throw it back to email either way. So that's where I do all of my communication, but I love connecting with people, everywhere that's available. And I'm trying really hard to like restart my TikTok posting, but
hey, nice.
It's on Instagram. I create
nice right
stuff,
before
but
it goes away, huh?
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, no, it is a lot of work and it's a lot of places. I'm trying to up my LinkedIn game because I've completely neglected my LinkedIn.
That's a whole other ball game.
And I feel like it's one of the platforms that's pretty safe from people deleting it out of a like social anxiety standpoint.
No, you're right. It actually probably has the longevity of like email and things like that because it's also made for getting jobs.
So I'm trying to figure out the LinkedIn thing and YouTube because now we've got this nice bougie setup. So we're gonna do some more YouTube videos.
Yes, your setup looks so beautiful. This is perfect.
So much. Well, I'll see you at networking events all around town. But yeah, everybody else follow. If you like today's episode, please feel free to share, tag us. We'd love to see it, hear what you thought. And thank you so much, Katie, for your time on this Monday.
Of course. Thank you. And can't wait to see you at another event.
Sounds good. Catch you later, guys. Bye.
Bye.